case you won't, says I'm Ciarán O'Keeffe, and I'm a practicing artist, which is rare. You get the chance to actually stand up and say, yeah, hi, I'm an artist, so my ego feels really empowered. So it's great as well that there's people here. You can laugh at all my jokes, and a big round of applause at the end is really appreciated. And then we pass a hat, and any euro would be even more appreciated. I've put together a series of slides that kind of look at basically what I do, and there's one or two film clips as well, just kind of video clips, just to show what the practice looks like. In that, I guess my practice is chiefly based around performance, spoken word, live art, for want of a better way of putting it. And inevitably, because I'm asked to do something like this, I thought, what would be the best way to approach it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the hows, the what's, the how, and the why. So it's what do I do, how do I do it, and more importantly, I guess, is why do I do it? So first slide. When I was in primary school, we had a great teacher called Sister Jarlath, and Sister Jarlath gave us the key to writing an English essay. Hey folks, come on in. She gave us the key to writing the perfect essay, which is always start with a quote. So kind of that works for Sister Jarlath, it'll work for me. So actually I'm going to open with two quotes. And the first one, it's from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which is kind of one of my favourite films of all time. And at the beginning of it, before everything starts, this little surtitle, and it says, not that it matters, but most of what follows is true. So that's my rule for today. Not that it matters, but most of what follows is true. I guess in many ways, what I would possibly do as an artist is that I draw on what's called the self. So look, people would be interested maybe in colour theory, they're interested in landscape. I have an ego, I'm interested in myself. So all my work draws on myself. And I suppose what I do is I find something that is a truth about my own situation, and I take that truth and I kind of reposition it. So a definite fact possibly, and then I take it and sometimes I fudge it around, but I do something with it where suddenly my past becomes more interesting. So I suppose in that case, not that it matters, but most of what follows is true. The other way, I suppose, is just that why make art? So on the one part is that I'm just curious about myself, the world I live in. And the other thing as well, I suppose, is I think this is a really great quote. Felix Gonzalez Torres, an American artist, born in Cuba, and he died quite young. And this is from an interview he gave just before he died. And for me, it really sums up why I would make art. So above all else, it is about leaving a mark that I existed. I was here, I was hungry, I was defeated, I was happy, I was sad, I was in love, I was afraid, I was hopeful. I had an idea and I had a good purpose, and that's why I made works of art. I just think that's a really nice way of saying it. It is just a case of saying that I'm here and I want to leave some sort of a mark, which I suppose is a great introduction possibly to why I do it. This is my school ID card when I was in secondary school. And as a youngster, I was one of those people who I really felt very invisible. I was kind of a really good kid. I did everything you were supposed to do. I followed all the rules and regulations. And I know if I went back to this secondary school, they wouldn't remember me. I just had this invisibility. I just kind of, it's not that I didn't exist, but I just kind of felt as if I was just kind of cruising along. But I could hide it very well because I kind of had that nice, pleasant personality. Now this card really, in very many ways, sums it up in that they misspell my name, not only the first name, but the last name. It's C-I-A-R-A, Fada N-O-K-E-E-F-E. But I was kind of a classic good kid. And when I did my leaving cert in 79, they told me to get a job in an office, and that's exactly what I did. So age 17, I was working for the VHI, Voluntary Health Insurance Board, and I was paying a pension at 17. And I hated it. I really, really hated it. I'd always enjoyed going to art galleries. I remember coming here actually when they got the Agnes Martin. I think that was possibly in the 70s. And I was on the Late Late Show, and we just came in to have a look at it. We just said, wow, let's just come in and have a look. I just always liked creativity, but I kind of felt it's not a space for me, it was a space for somebody else. So I'm working in VHI, really disliked it. Felt very just unhappy, I suppose. And a kind of bad word coming up here, but I think it really sums it up. After 6 years of fuck it, I'm not doing this anymore. So I just decided I'm going to do what I want to do, very selfishly. And before I told my family, I had given up the job, which broke my dad's heart, and I had got a one-way ticket to Canada. And I just kind of felt, hey, let's see how this goes. Initially, it was a disastrous move. Canada was wrong choice. Like, it sounds really weird now, but I went there to do missionary work, because I kind of felt nobody would stop me if I was going out to do God's work, which is so daft. But I went out and I did God's work, and it was just dreadful, a disaster. I was totally out of my depth. And then rather than come home with my tail between my legs and everybody telling me, well, now, we told you, that's what happens when you give up your Grand City pensionable job, I felt, I'm just going to do something absolutely mad. So I went down to New York, and I applied to a theatre program down there, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is in the centre of Manhattan, and I studied there for 3 years. And New York was... anybody here from New York?
You?
Yeah.
You are from everywhere in New York?
Pardon me?
You look like you are from everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong,
but this is where I started. Yeah, I'm from New York. I'm going to do the rest of it in an American accent. I know. But New York was brilliant. It was the making of me, totally. Like, so I'm not quite sure that it's just me, but I think coming out of Ireland in the 60s and 70s, I don't really think we had the right to exist. Now, that sounds very dismissive, but I think we really did do what we had to do because you had to do. Like, society was very repressed. There was lots of kind of financial difficulties and everything. And when I went to New York, it was like, it was just out of this world. Like, I just could not believe the excitement of being in New York. And what was great about New York is, particularly at this college, I was the only Irish person. So I was this fabulous novelty of a flower. Oh, the Irish guy. So I just loved the attention. And it was the first time I really kind of felt, actually, I'm not so bad. I'm kind of interesting. People laugh at my jokes. They kind of want to hang out and everything. So it was excellent. So the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So just two things, photograph, but just want to look at the quote, and then we'll talk about my stunning body after that. With the American Academy, this is from their training philosophy. An important part of the training process includes a highly personal inward journey to better understand one's emotional reach by breaking down internal barriers. Effectively what it does is, it's a program, it's a bit similar to method acting, if you're familiar with that, people like Marlon Brando or Daniel Day-Lewis. What you do is, you find a way that you can associate with a character from your own private life. So the best way I could put it is, if you're playing Hamlet and you want to decide to teach Ophelia her lesson and put her in her place and totally denigrate her, what you did was you find some emotional parallel in your own life where you did something similar. You tap into those emotions, so when you're on stage, that's what you're thinking of. The time I told my dad to F off, the time that I gave out stink to somebody, and that's what you work on. So, a bit of an exaggeration, but in very many ways, as a method actor, when you're on stage, you really are the part. I know it sounds so silly, but you really are the part. In that, if you take someone like Robert De Niro, who's very method-based, and if you take someone like Laurence Olivier, English actor, who's very classically English trained, if the two of them are on stage in a scene and somebody shouts up and goes, "You're stupid," Laurence Olivier will go, "No, I'm not. You don't know what you're talking about." And De Niro will look at the walls wondering, where did that come from? Because he's so caught up in the space. I love that, in that, again, coming from that society where I would feel generally we didn't deal with emotion. I know certainly I wouldn't have dealt with emotion. It was a great opportunity to suddenly I could really dive deep into emotion, into myself. But in a sense, that's part of the problem, in that I would have felt totally ill-equipped to dive so deep into method that it just became problematic. Like, literally, you'd be on stage and I'd be doing some highly emotional moment and I'd be drawing on stuff that I don't really understand from my past. Stuff that was just very problematic, very loaded. And suddenly all this stuff is bouncing around inside my head and I've no way of dealing with it. So, in one way I had a great time, and the other way it was problematic, in that you begin to bang into things that you shouldn't be banging into. That's kind of what will come up now when I talk about my later arts practice. Like this scene here is from a play called On the Edge, And in Ireland, I was very much seen as, oh, Ciarán is really lovely. I was always the lead in the local musical society, that sort of thing. So I was wheeled out, sing my song, kiss the girl, and I'd be wheeled off. Whereas in the States, because I was so emotionally entrenched, they gave me all the weirdo parts. And I always remember with this scene, the closing scene of this play is me raping my sister to Dolly Parton's Love Is Like a Butterfly. So just really weird, but the problem is I was tapping into, what do I do to attack my sister this way? So obviously totally problematic. But I'm going to recap that in a moment. The other thing is what I really got from, the thing that I really got from my studies in the States is, you know, you do a lot of reading of scripts and stuff, and I really like Samuel Beckett. And in a biography of Beckett, there's this quote that I really liked. Jules Renard, who is the person we talked about, he was a French diarist from the turn of the 20th century. And in the book, Deirdre Baird, the author, says, Renard had trained himself to be absolutely honest in his journals, and it was the last entry which has had the most sustained and moving effect upon Beckett. Renard had been ill and confined to his bed for some time. In the entry of the 7th of April 1910, which is his last entry, he wrote, last time I wanted to get up. Dead weight. A leg hangs outside. Then a trickle runs down my leg. I allow it to reach my heel before I make up my mind it will dry in the sheets. And what Beckett did was, from that quote, he thought, and he knew, what really matters is it's the pursuit of truth, that everything I put on stage has a really deep, deep truth for me. And I suppose that's why in very many ways he's quite obscure. There is this truth behind it, but he's doing it in his own brilliant way. But I really liked that idea, that, and I still totally adhere to it today as my later practice, that it has to matter for me. You know, now I don't mean that it has to be a heavy theme, but it just has to matter for me. We're going to look at some stuff that's really bizarre, like totally comic and stupid and weird, but the root of it is, this matters to me, and that's what allows, I think, the stuff to be very funny or be very interesting. So again, I like that idea. So in terms of this investigation of art, and this is my first introduction to art, like I have never encountered such passion as I encountered in my 3 years at the American Academy of Dramatic Art. And now I am now an art, I have the privilege of being a lecturer out in IADT, and the students are great. Like I love the job, and occasionally you glimpse passion. Okay, in the American system, because it's so hard to get into it, because it costs so much money, and because the drive is really particular, it really does get people who just push and push and push and push. So it was great to be part of that passion. I wouldn't like to be part of it all the time, really, really draining. And then the whole thing, this idea of the pursuit of truth. And I guess maybe that's the thing I'm going to talk about, that idea of the pursuit of truth, my truth. I gave up acting because when I came back from the States, I just was getting into space I shouldn't be getting into, a lot of problems. I know it sounds over the top now, because I'm much better space now, but I just was out of my depth as a performer. I think I was a good actor. I got really nice reviews, I got good reviews, and I was lucky to be in regular employment. But just the cost, it was really, really draining, and I probably was a bit of an idiot. You know, people thought, Jesus, keep away from him. He's just over the top. I went back to art college, and I studied art at BA level for 4 years, and that was kind of visual art, so photography and stuff like that. And this is the only time I kind of flirted again with performance. In that I did a series of self-portraits. This is all me, and there's about maybe 40 in the series, and it's from a piece called Wish I Was Normal, Self-Portraits as Heterosexual. I went to college in 95, and I came out in 93, and I came out quite late. I was 30, and very much it was just that because I was a good person, I didn't want to offend anybody, I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I really did have a belief in, I guess, I don't say Catholicism, but I believed in a moral view of things, a moral view of things. And I kind of felt, you know, that's what you do, you get on with stuff, you know, you live your life, and best luck to you, don't step out of line. So in 1993, the government finally decided to legalise homosexuality, which is bizarre. Up until 1993, it was a criminal offence. And I was one of those people, because it was wrong, I wasn't going to partake. I'm a good boy. And with 93, I thought, actually, It's fine being queer, gay, homosexual, faggot, whatever. There is nothing wrong with it. And it took me a long time to realise there's nothing wrong with it. So when I went back to college, equipped with my understanding of art from the American Academy, I just dove straight into making very strong, I think, political work. Like, a lot of it is really weak, it's not very interesting. But that was my whole drive. I'm here, I'm queer, I'm loud, blah, 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 blah. And this was one, it's the only piece really that I would still engage with from that time. The idea being that each of these is me, okay? So which one do you want to pick on? You know, do you want to pick on the thug, the down and out, the person with cancer, the priest, the pervert, the bouncer, the cool guy, blah, 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 blah. So that whole idea of having spent 30 years effectively being picked on by society, I was just really intrigued when that was all gone, you know, that now I get a chance to look at something. Did that, and post-college I ended up teaching, and I would have, my practice was kind of photography and a bit of painting. And again, it was okay, you know, you trundle along. Any artist in the audience will know in Dublin, it's very easy to trundle along. And then I suppose you kind of do want to do something to make a mark or have a go at something interesting. And then I got the greatest godsend any was ever given. And I got a great opportunity. This is me, before I put the weight on. And it's a character that I used for 10 years as a performance artist called Smiling Canker. And there used to be this huge, big charity event held in the Olympia every year called the Alternative Miss Ireland. And as a queer and as a performer, I just loved going to it. I just thought it was great. Just kind of mad fun, crazy, over the top, everybody loving it. And it was for a great cause. It raised $250,000 over its time frame. And I thought, you know, actually I'd like to have a go at that. I just think this would be a lot of fun. So I went in for Alternative Miss Ireland and I won it. With Smiling Canker. And I kind of thought, actually this is kind of interesting. It opens up a lot of doors. And what I could do is, there's the possibility that I could actually have a lot of fun making art in a very different, unique way. I thought, you know what I'm going to do is, I'm going to scrap the photography, I'm going to scrap the painting, I'm going to scrap everything I ever learned, I'm just going to have a bit of fun with Smiling Canker. But having done so many bouts of art education, I really decided, actually, let's approach this in a really kind of good, logical manner. So, another quote, Oscar Wilde, "Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth." And it is so true. When you are pretending to be somebody else, you can say anything you want and everybody thinks it's not you saying it. And I just loved that idea. This character, I'm going to show you just a little clip of him in a moment. This character was just really absurd, over the top, nonsensical, stupid, crazy. And I just took advantage of it, that there'd be an event and I would kind of apply for it or be asked in to do something. And each time I'd say, actually, I'm going to do something interesting here. And I'll talk about something that I quite like. But people would always think, oh, that's really funny or entertaining, or occasionally people would get something from it. To the point of view, I did a one-person show called An Insignificant Man in the Fringe Festival one year. So it was me on stage for an hour, talking. And I was talking always about Ciarán. Everything was a Ciarán story. Every single story. Bizarre. My best friend came to it. He said, God, that was so funny. And somebody standing beside her said, how much of it was true? And Avril said, don't be daft, none of it was true. So it's just kind of funny, this idea of you get permission to do what you want to do with the mask. Also as well, I suppose, because I was very aware of how the whole method acting is just a bit kind of crazy, I knew how to avoid that sort of stuff. So I just had a lot of fun creating scenarios or whatever. The other thing as well is with the character, I think because it came from what was seen as a drag background, I think people weren't quite sure really how to place me. Whereas with Smiling Canker was always a man. Smiling Canker was never drag. Like, I didn't shave my legs, my arms, I didn't put in fake boobs. It was always a man. But what was it was a very confused man who occasionally wore a dress to reflect the confusion. So I think that was one thing. The drag scene didn't know quite where to place me. I think definitely the art scene, I think people in the art scene weren't sure, performance art, is it a piss take or not? So I quite enjoyed that you couldn't place me, you know, and that gives you an independence that you can do anything daft that you want to do. But one thing I did all the time was I balanced it off. I would do a piece in a club like Panty Bar or the George or Sugar Club or whatever, and then I would try to balance it off with doing something in IMA or Temple Bar Galleries or the project. So it was really quite nice. And I like the idea that, like, what is art? And that's the thing that intrigues me. Like, you're all sitting there listening to me and I'm pontificating about, oh, I'm an artist. Oh, it's great, it's great. But the thing is, so what is art? You know, what is the possibility for art? What's the potential for art? And I liked with Canker that I could do the exact same thing that I could do in a gay club and I could do it in an art gallery. And 2 audiences would respond to it. Just a lot of fun. And it's good as well that art is fun. I'm just going to show you a little clip of it and hopefully it'll come across as fun. The thing about Canker is that with Canker, the core of Canker is a terrible, terrible loneliness. Canker craves, not attention, but Canker craves to be wanted and to be needed and to be loved. And it's funny, because he's doing it in this kind of yay, zany way, people never really got it. They just thought it was really, really funny. So this is just one little clip from a festival I did a number of years ago, and have a gander at it.
To one, follows directions, leaves you play on stage. Sorry, I just have to plan everything, I'm just really nervous. This is all for don't get out to me like I'm the baby Jesus. Sorry, I don't know that thing. Go clear your hands. Oh, stop. Why? Don't know, it's really funny. Statistics. No, please, logic, facts. I can't find anyone to love. The thing is, it's a really big universe out there. And I've been researching this really big universe out there. You know, there are a septillion stars in God's known universe. A septillion. That's 10 to the power of 24. As in 10, followed by 24 noughts. As in 10, not. Don't move it. And the thing is, we're not even on the star. We're a lump of rock and gas and mineral that spins around a relatively unimportant star. And on our lump of rock and gas and mineral, there are 7.4 billion people. And I can't find anyone to love. Audience participation kept coming up.
So yeah, it just kind of gives a glimpse of what I did for 10 years. And I don't know about anybody else, but I had a great time. It's just it was a lot of fun. Yeah, just really, really good. But after 10 years, I kind of felt there wasn't any reason for it anymore, particularly after marriage equality. Like, I would have always seen Canker as being quite political, which might be a bit of an overstatement. But I just believe Canker was a way of expressing, talking about stuff that interested me as a queer, as a gay man. And with marriage equality, I kind of felt, I don't want anything more now. I'm happy with that. And even as a non-performer, I would have been very politically driven. Like, I would have been on Gay Switchboard and various organisations, and I worked for Gay Community News, because I just felt, maybe somebody who's been repressed for so long, it's important that we stand up and we say we're here and we begin to argue and fight our cause. And by 2015, I think it had worked, in that the Ireland I left in 1985, by 2015 was incredibly changed. Like, just really, really good. And I felt there's nothing else that I need here, and there is nothing else that I want here. So I decided to fold down Canker and put him away. So that created the problem. I think, okay, so what do I do now? In that I like being creative. So I took advantage of that. I thought I'd go back and do my master's. I had no need to do a master's really. Like I'm 60 now. I was 58 or something. I went back. You know, at that stage, I didn't need a master's, but kind of just a nice opportunity just to go back and indulge. And plus as well, because I tidied up and cleared this part of my practice, if I go back into a master's, what will come of it? So I went and did a master's in NCAD, which I would highly recommend. Pardon me?
Excuse me, I'm a bit lost since I see this video. I'm completely astonished.
Okay. All I can say is just...
What you're saying is that you yet have a master, or you want
No, so when I finished this, when I wrapped up this character, I decided to go back and do a master's.
or is master a kind of methodology?
A master's in fine art or an MA. So, but again, I just did that for the 2 years. It was a great chance to just kind of re-explore and see exactly where I wanted to be and what I was at. So I thought what I'd do here maybe is just the idea of I've talked about the why. I thought it might be of use maybe just talk about how one makes work, how I make work. So at the end of the Masters, I produced a piece called Everything is a Performance. And with Everything is a Performance, I kind of wanted to do what Canker did, but remove the mask. I kind of want to just be Ciarán and just deliver it that way as much as possible. So where I was living, there was a really tragic incident around the corner for me in a house in that a guy who I vaguely knew in the scene, like I knew him to see, he died. And his body wasn't found until months later. And I remember passing by his house and there were all these blue bottles on the window. I'm thinking, that's really odd, and they just seem to be getting more and more and more and more. And I called into the neighbour, and the neighbour said, no, God, everything's fine. The gas company were in there recently. So I said, God, that's really, really odd. And the very next day, the police broke in, and the man had been dead for a long, long time. And while I didn't know him personally, he struck me as a really nice man. Very kind of slightly, a little bit odd. And I kind of thought, wow, what's that like? Because I didn't know what happened to him. But if you're sitting there and you realise after a stroke or a heart attack that actually there is nobody going to come to help me, I am going to die. I thought, what would I be like if I was in that position? And I just wanted to explore that idea of, if you know it's going to end, okay, where are the values in what you've lived through? So the best way I think of it is, how do you measure a well-lived life? I suppose that's my thing. Like, what I've done, does it have a value? So I wrote this piece where this character, who looked like me, just bounced around from all sorts of things. And I used some stories from my own life, and I borrowed stories from my friends, I borrowed stories from everything. So just to give you an idea, this is how I would work. It seems a bit over the top, but these are all the references that I had for that particular play. So I would see something and think, okay, let's say William Carlos Williams, an American poet, and I'd see a bit of a poem and think, actually, I really like that. I can use that. And Gabrielle Munter, she is an artist, and they've got a portrait up in the National Gallery, and it's my favourite painting up there of a young woman. And it's not a realistic painting, it's very Matisse-like. So I liked that idea. So I gathered all these things up, put them into a big pot, stirred them all around, and then I kind of ended up with the things that I most liked. So I chose these things, and then I just expanded them each and out. So let's say something like The Queer Art of Failure, Julia Halbert's done. I'm not a great theory reader, but that's a really good book. And it talks about the idea of one of the great things about being queer is you're pushed to a fringe. And on that fringe, it gives you the permission to do anything you want to do. And I thought that's really, really nice. So I was kind of thinking of that idea. Clove's final monologue from Endgame, again back to Samuel Beckett, where the young character, he just talks incessantly, just talks and talks and talks and talks, because he wants somebody to hear him. He wants somebody to be aware that he exists. So just put all of those things together and constructed a piece that was an hour long. And then as luck would have it, COVID hit. So it was meant to be a live performance piece, spoken word piece. And when COVID hit, everything closed down. So I decided I would do it as a live stream. So I just did a one-off performance. And this is just a little bit of it. And the thing to really stress is that the character is really bouncing around continuously with questions of what matters, and ultimately, I guess, the thing is, do I matter? You know, that idea, do I matter? Like, have I done something worthwhile? And this is the whole drive with the character. So let's have a little clip of it. At this stage, he is really drifting off Like he'll talk about things that he really liked and very happy with, and then at one stage, just at this stage, it's as if he's just really lost in his own thoughts, as if the actor has forgotten the script.
To be able to figure it all out. As if it was there, just there, right there, just beyond me. I sing a song. I float. I talk about you. I talk about myself. I count these flies. And then I dance. And then I dance. Then I talk about dancing. Look at me. Whoa! Look at me. Every little inch and fibre, every little speck of me, every moment, every little bit of glory. Dancing. Dancing.
I guess I've honed in on that bit. I mean, just again, give an example of what I do, but also it's just that I'm really fascinated by dance. I think in my own head, I am a dancer, but I'm not, unfortunately. I've no natural coordination in that I can't keep time. Like years ago, I was in a group and they gave me the power on and I hadn't a clue. I was all over the place trying to keep time. Or if I'm dancing with people in a group, I remember once being in a show with Smiling Canker character. I was meant to waltz at the end, and the person doing the choreography said, "Okay, Ciarán, actually, we'll just leave you at the back," and because I couldn't keep time and was doing everybody's head in. But I always wanted to make a piece on dance, and again, thankfully, courtesy of COVID, with all the galleries closed down, an opportunity came up in the main space in the gallery on Thomas Street, the NCAD gallery, that the window was available. And I said, look, I'd love it if I can have it for a week. And if you give it to me for the week, I'll just simply dance in the window. I'd love to be able to do that. And they went, yeah, absolutely, because there was no access to the gallery. You couldn't come into exhibitions because everything was closed. So I created this piece called Dance Alone. And I still do this now when I kind of just want to do something. I'll turn off all the lights in the kitchen and I'll put on my favourite music and I'll just dance around. I just love it. I love the freedom of it. I love the fun of it. I just thought that's what I'll do with this character. So I created a big playlist of all the songs that as an actor I had really related to with emotional recall. So for instance, certain songs now from my time as an actor that if I hear it, I'll tap back into that particular play or that particular moment because it's so drilled down to me emotionally. And what I did here was I put it on random and then I'd get up, I would dance, they live streamed it, and whatever music comes up, I'll just react to it. It got a really nice response. It did well. I think as well because I was possibly the only art that was available for that week in the whole of Ireland. People did turn up to have a look. And again, just a tiny little clip of it. It would have been half an hour long, live streamed, and then I just basically danced around my heart's content. So again, that's it. For half an hour, I just jumped around and danced, and I enjoyed it, a lot of fun. And it's kind of interesting when you make a piece of work and then people relate to it afterwards and they kind of recontextualize it. And there was an essay written about it. It was I really enjoyed it, very interesting. And they were saying it's really interesting the way this particular artist has engaged with the fact that everything has been removed from us, and he presents this piece as a tease, as if to say, we're not allowed to do this anymore as a political, social thing. Wow, that wasn't the reason, but it was nice to see it, And again, that idea of not that it matters, but most of what follows is true. That's one person's version of truth to my version of truth. Just going to quickly jump ahead then and bring it up to where I am now at the moment. So, back into the studio, working around and stuff. And then I thought I was going into a piece about dance. I just have really wanted to write a full hour-long piece with a lot of spoken word about dance. Why dance, how dance, where dance, etc., etc. So stick up all these notes on the wall, and then kind of thinking, okay, fine, dance. Why dance? And again, well, because I fail at dancing. I don't feel I can dance as a group with people. And I think, okay, what's that about? And I'm thinking, actually, what that is? That's right back to the beginning of that ID card. It's this idea of, it wasn't that I wasn't fitting in, it was that I was failing to fit in. I thought, that's kind of interesting. So you look at your whole life, in a sense, as a big part of it being failure, and thinking, what's the big drive there? And then I kept thinking, with this, as I pared everything back from notes, the only thing that was left was one monologue, where the character, essentially me, is at a youth club dance, and the slow set comes up, and immediately panics and moves to the back, and in the shadows at the back looks at everybody dancing. And there's one particular guy dancing, and the monologue is this idea of somebody who isn't aware of why he is being attracted to this particular man, but it's so obvious that it's really deep, not sexual, that's boxing, it's just an inherent deep attraction, and doesn't understand the attraction. Again, actually, that's really what it's about. It's about desire. So I'm going to read you two little bits. I've dropped the idea of dance, and it is now the whole idea of desire. What is desire? What are my desires? Where does desire come from? Now, at the moment, it's very kind of loose, but I know it's not a spoken word, it's not a performance piece, because I don't want to do that. Maybe because it's too close to the bone, I don't want to be an actor again. So at the moment, if someone used to say, what am I doing? I would say, I'm making a book. And the reason I say I'm making a book is that I want there to be a lot of visuals in it that have the same value as the text. Now, other than that, I'm really not quite sure what it is, but I just want to show or give two bits to it. This is the first one. And this is a piece that I'm just kind of, at the moment, as a working title, it's just called My First Dirty Picture. So the idea is that this is the visual. Now, whether that would be a video or a book, whatever, but at the moment for me, it's a book. So this would be the image with it. And then I can't have been much older than 9, maybe 10. One week in school, one of us, Owen Scully, brought back a dirty picture. The first any of us had ever seen. It was torn from one of those health/fitness/natures magazines. Those ones pretending not to be porn. Showing people going about their regular daily business, swimming, playing sports, cooking, having dinner, but with their cocks hanging out, as you do. Owen's torn picture showed people, men and women, at a barbecue on a beach, laughing and relaxing, cooking and passing food around, all of them starkers. God knows where he got it from, but we were thrilled he had, secretly passing it back and forth across the week to have a good look. Each of us clueless as to its exact meaning, its exact power, its exact potential. But at that age, when you'd never seen such things, this was the most fascinating thing in the whole wide world. Though for some reason, unlike my school pals, the naked men were more fascinating to me. At the end of the week, mystified with thrilling uncertainty, I swapped my deck of old-maid playing cards for the torn-out picture. Keeping it solely to myself, I quietly took it out of circulation. Then we all went back to chasing one another around the handball alleys or playing soldiers in the long grass of the big backfield. And then, second one, and this is called a scratch. I am 12. Gary Dwyer is in the class below me. A tough little bloke, like the rest of us. He'd had it rough, but at that age, surrounded by dozens of others, you just get on with it. You don't question things, they are what they are. We are not friends. We are not part of the same group. I am fascinated by him though, watching him at a distance or when he passes near or by. His older brother is more chilled, friendlier. The older brother has an easier smile, so I hang out with the brother. Down by the ruins at the back of the school. We've been warned not to hang out there anymore, but there's nothing else to do. I think the Christian brothers are suspicious of some imagined dangerous ulterior motive. Boys are not supposed to get that close in these abandoned areas. There we throw stones at one another in our tribal games with such force that chunks are knocked out of the plaster walls. Wanting the thrill of such aggression, the younger Dwyers sometimes join in. Then I fuck stones at him as hard as I can. I don't actually remember anymore what he looked like, but I fancied him, whatever that meant. One night in the dorm, a gang of us were messing around, joke scrapping. In the force and crazed energy, we all ended up piled onto his bed. In the crush, I was pressed down hard against him, the heavy sound of breathing and straining. My mouth to his forehead, I gently kissed him. Freaked, pushing against the trembling mass, he lashes out, scratching me across the chest with his nails. It stings, I bleed. For one brief moment, the two of us, breathing faster and heavier, are facing off against one another. Nonchalantly batting away his anger, I wipe away the blood with my fingers. I pretend that I don't know what he's talking about. Then we just get on with it, all of us going our own way, back to our own beds. To this day, I still have a scar where he scratched me, just barely visible, across my collarbone, just below the hollow of my throat. That's it, folks. Thanks very much.